Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengozan. Today is August 26th. The main news at this moment. So CIA Director John Ratcliffe flew to Moscow. Why did he fly there? That is interesting. There is still no official statement from the CIA, the White House, or the State Department. But the scale of the leak itself suggests that no one really tried to hide the visit. Let me remind you, John Ratcliffe is the second most important person in US intelligence after, of course, the American president. At first, the Russian side, represented by Peskov, stated that they were not aware at all that anyone had arrived. The plane had already landed at Vnukovo, and Peskov says, "I don't know anything at all, I'm not aware." Then there was a different phrasing from Peskov. "I can neither confirm nor deny." And by the way, Peskov stated that there was no personal meeting with Putin. And here, strangely enough, he might not have been lying. Most likely, an important short ultimatum was delivered. Ratcliffe delivered it to his colleague Narishkin, the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, and the importance of this message, by all appearances, was extremely high. Let me remind you, Ratcliffe flew out of Andrews on Sunday, made a stop in Riga, then flew to Vnukovo, spent 4 hours in Moscow, and on the same day the plane headed back towards Riga. This wasn't a trip for negotiations with an overnight stay, it was a fly-in visit, planned in such a way as to minimize both publicity and the duration of the contact. 4 hours, considering the travel time to and from the airport, is definitely not about negotiations, it's about arriving briefly to hand over a text in person when other channels are no longer working. So what they could have actually been talking about. The purpose of the meeting has not been officially disclosed, but the Wall Street Journal reports that, according to their sources, the US has intelligence indicating that Russia may be preparing operations designed to test the resolve of NATO countries. Well, provocations, very serious provocations against alliance countries. The former deputy director of National Intelligence for Mission Integration interpreted the visit as a possible attempt to convey a warning to Moscow publicly rather than directly. "We know what you want to do and we strongly advise you not to do it." I saw that some publications wrote that perhaps the topic concerned Ukraine and Iran. It seems to me that for this topic Trump has special representatives or, in an extreme case, a telephone. But a personal visit by the head of the CIA is, you must agree, about a completely different level and a different urgency of the topic. In total, CIA directors have visited Moscow only 7 times in all 34 years, and every time the topic was very, very serious. This in itself is stronger than any detail about the plane's route, the fact that Ratcliffe flew in. The previous visit, let me remind you, was Burns on November 2nd and 3rd, 2021. Burns flew to Moscow and tried to dissuade Putin from invading Ukraine. Or rather, not dissuade, but said, "We know, but we recommend that you do not do this." They presented their American intelligence data, saying, "Look, we are aware of what you are preparing." Well, that is to say, a visit by the CIA director to Moscow is not a tool of routine diplomacy. These are events that happen extremely rarely and almost always at a moment when it is no longer possible to say something through ordinary standard channels. That is precisely why I believe the topic was a possible serious provocation, the preparation of this provocation by the Russian Federation against one of the NATO countries, and not the topic of Iran or the topic of Ukraine. But there is another point. In 2021, Burns warned that a war was being prepared. We know about this and we recommend that you do not do it. But Putin attacked anyway. That is, 3 months later, the war happened anyway. And if this time it is also about such a warning, then Putin might also test NATO's strength, even understanding that the Americans do not want him to do it. But the Russian Federation is now in a completely different position, much more vulnerable, including to US sanctions. And the Russian economy is clearly not as strong now, so the very fact of the CIA director's visit is not a guarantee of de-escalation, it is not a guarantee that the deranged Botox-filled jellyfish won't attack someone or commit provocations. But it is, a final warning. The most likely countries against which Russia might carry out a provocation, I think it's clear to everyone, are the neighbors of the Russian Federation and countries that are part of the North Atlantic Alliance, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Finland, Sweden. The main risk zones could be the Baltic Sea, the Narva area, where the Russians have already repeatedly carried out provocations, the Suwalki Gap, Kaliningrad, and, of course, the airspace of the Baltic states. That is, there could be a hybrid sabotage or a limited military action here to test whether NATO is ready. And that's actually a good question. Is NATO ready? What do you think, friends? By the way, write your opinion in the comments. Let's see what everyone thinks. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. It helps with promoting the channel and fighting against Putin's propaganda. Let's do this together, so be sure to subscribe. In Russia, let's move on to good news, to wonderful news. Ukraine, unlike everyone else, is creating good news around Russia. In Russia, not a day goes by without some oil refinery or logistics hub burning down, and preferably both, plus a military factory as well. In short, today there was both. It is burning, or rather, the Wildberries logistics center in Kotovsk, Tambov Oblast, has finished burning. Let's watch this wonderful video.
Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, дістань до Волгограда, Саратов потруси, нехай гримить в Тамбові, Рязані та Ростові, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси.
The attack was confirmed by both the local governor and the company itself. The total area of the complex was 108,000 square meters, with a capacity of up to 54 million items. The warehouse burned down completely. This is one of Wildberries' key hubs in central Russia. It served the Tambov, Lipetsk, Voronezh and neighboring regions. This warehouse was already attacked on July 18th and it was quickly restored. And back then some people were rejoicing, saying, look at that. But I will repeat every time that if Ukrainian drones have targeted a goal, they will burn it to the ground. Wildberries probably decided there that if they started attacking Ozon, they would be given a break. But you chose Putin, so reap the rewards, don't relax. I think that in light of the latest decree that Putin signed about introducing temporary management in companies that poorly protect their warehouses or other property, Wildberries won't even have time to be nationalized. It will burn down before that. The Ukrainian land will become a bone in the throat. I think that by now no one doubts that most of the Wildberries and Ozon warehouses will burn down, and refineries will burn down, and not just them, by the way. And for the first time, I came across a version from local authorities with this wording. The fire completely destroyed the Wildberries logistics center after the attack on Kotovsk, reported Governor Yevgeny Pervyshov. Wow, I think, well, look at that. According to him, all the drones there were shot down. But 3 drones somehow slipped through. They slipped through and hit the warehouse building. I think now that is a breakthrough in communication. I actually reread it twice. It wasn't debris falling on the warehouse roof, but 3 whole drones that hit this warehouse. I honestly think the governor is lying. He is lying. If debris destroys warehouses completely, then a whole drone should have destroyed the entire Tambov region. So the governor shouldn't lie. But that's not all. A huge oil refinery has been attacked, which is among the top 5 largest and most powerful Russian plants. We are talking about the Lukoil Nizhegorod-Nefteyorg's Intez refinery in Kstovo. Its capacity is about 17 million tons of oil per year. It's just a huge plant. Let's watch the video. Beautiful. For Lukoil, this is their largest refinery and the 4th largest in Russia by capacity and one of the main gasoline producers. It accounts for, attention, 11% of all Russian gasoline production. This plant supplies both Moscow and the Moscow region with diesel and also aviation fuel. And in the context of the new wave of the fuel crisis in Russia, this is a very, very painful blow. To understand the scale, how much this behemoth produced, I'll provide some figures. Do you know how much gasoline it produces per day? 18.5 million liters of gasoline per day and 16.3 million liters of diesel per day. Huge volumes. So it's a fantastic target. Respect and gratitude to everyone involved. Well, we see that Ukraine continues to fight this giant monster, and it is fighting quite successfully. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we will continue the fundraiser, for which we have literally 5% left to collect. So I really ask you to get involved. Fundraiser for EcoFlow charging stations for the favorite unmanned systems battalion of the 107th Brigade. The battalion is carrying out missions in the Pokrovsk direction and in the Dobropilya area, one of the hottest directions right now. Let's help our warriors. Please watch this video.
Ми, військовослужбовці 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем «Фаворит», виконуємо бойові завдання по знищенню ворога на Покровському напрямку та в районі Добропілля. Звертаємось до Бориса Тисенгаузена та спільноти каналу Бориса з проханням допомогти закрити збір на придбання зарядних станцій для АКБ ударних дронів. Слава Україні! Героям
You can
слава!
find the direct link to our fundraiser right in the description of this video, so please take a moment to check it out. There is Mono, Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. The QR code in the corner is in case you happen to be watching me on another channel. And thank you so much for helping our warriors and for supporting Ukraine. Thank you very much. But that's not all. A burned-down warehouse, a burned-down oil refinery. This night, the operation to counter Russian ballistics continued. One of the Russian army's missile units and its associated infrastructure were hit. Volodymyr Zelensky announced this. Officially, the specific unit is not named, but there is a high probability that it hit the 26th Missile Brigade. The brigade itself is based in Luga, in the Leningrad region, but its units are deployed near Klintsy in the Bryansk region for strikes against Ukraine. In June of last year, this group was already hit. Back then, one launcher detonated and 2 more were damaged. At that time, the Russians were just preparing to launch missiles at Kiev. I hope that this time they were hit hard as well. And I remind you, there is a real hunt going on for the launches right now. Not a day goes by without such news appearing. And one more thing, one more piece of news. I don't know if you saw the statement by Putin's advisor Kobyakov or not. I came across it yesterday, and you know I was once again convinced of just how completely deranged everyone over there in the swampy wastelands is. Putin's advisor stated in all seriousness that Ukraine had planned an invasion of Russia on March 8, 2022. The executive secretary of the Eastern Economic Forum Organizing Committee, Anton Kobyakov, stated in an interview with TASS that at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Russian military discovered documents in the abandoned headquarters of one of the territorial defense brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine, which indicate that Kiev was preparing an invasion of Russia on March 8, 2022. I will quote the moron. We identified them. We beat them to it by 2 weeks, Kobyakov emphasized. According to him, the Ukrainian side allegedly wanted to present the war as a gift for Women's Day, but thanks to the foresight of the Russian leadership, they received a black mark. God, what kind of morons do you have to be? Moreover, apparently, Ukraine was preparing to attack Russian troops on the territory of Belarus during the joint exercises. Just like that, Ukraine would have pushed into Belarus, where both Russian and Belarusian troops were stationed. Let me remind you, Russia is a nuclear state. So if the Ukrainians had crossed the border, Russia could have simply taken and struck with nuclear weapons. There wouldn't have been any sanctions against Russia because, well, they would have been attacked, and the Union state as well. And Ukraine wouldn't have received any help, no weapons, because Ukraine would have been considered the aggressor then. And I won't even mention the arming of Ukraine in 2022. Why do they embarrass themselves so much with such stupid statements? Can you imagine? Ukraine marched on Russia and Belarus on a nuclear state in 2022. And also this, Ukraine wanted to present the war as a gift for March 8th. What, are you an idiot or something? A gift for whom? Well, everything is clear here. All their officials just lie. They are so completely detached. Well, it's impossible when you have a completely warped space, a warped worldview. Let's take Peskov, for example, who initially said that no one had arrived at all. He wasn't aware that anyone had arrived, and then he says that Putin didn't meet with the person who didn't arrive, the CIA director. So first he blatantly lies, and an hour later he reveals that, well, yes, he did arrive. And what's the big deal? Why lie stupidly when you can just say no comment? He arrived? Who arrived? No comment. I just don't know why they have to lie. Lukashenko announced a surprise combat readiness check after the CIA director's visit to Putin. You see, the one who wasn't attacked on March 8th, that's whose backside is burning. And he's been constantly stirring up trouble lately. Remember, there was a movie about a maniac with dissociative identity disorder, where 23 personalities coexisted within the maniac, and the most terrifying personality was the Beast, and they gave it that name. That movie was called Split. A fantastic movie if anyone hasn't seen it. So anyway, Lukashenko's situation is a bit more modest. He also has several personalities present, but not that many. He keeps swaying from side to side. One moment he's a kind mustachioed collective farmer, the next he's a formidable military dictator. Let's urgently check the readiness of the troops. He just can't make up his mind. He's always reacting to the situation. But the strawberry guy has an animal instinct. After all, he's been a dictator in power for 30 years. At the slightest sign of trouble, he immediately starts twitching, running around somewhere, packing suitcases, I think, and that little backpack for Kolenka too. Interesting information is coming in from space researchers, at the very least unpleasant for us, and not just for us, but for the whole world, regarding the Russian satellite program Rasvet. Let me remind you, this is Russia simply creating, or at least trying to create, an analog to Starlink. It's clear that they won't create an equivalent, but they can certainly create problems. They are launching satellites into orbit in batches. Indeed, this could be a problem for Ukraine once there are more of these satellites in orbit. So here is the news. 2 satellites of the sovereign Starlink analog have malfunctioned and started falling to Earth. Before this, 1 satellite didn't even make it into space at all. It crashed immediately and malfunctioned, and now 2 more have started falling to Earth. These devices never performed a single orbit-raising maneuver, dropped below 300 kilometers, and will most likely enter the dense layers of the atmosphere, where they will break apart and burn up. 3 more satellites from this group, and I believe there were 17 launched in total, made unsuccessful attempts to climb and are now also descending. They remain at an altitude of about 310 kilometers. In general, 10 satellites are continuing their maneuvers. However, their altitude remains 200 kilometers lower than it should be. This does not in any way cancel out the problem for us. But as far as I know, the brightest Ukrainian minds and engineers, together with our partners, are currently working in this direction against this program. So you will have both a sunrise and a sunset at the same time. Peskov made another statement. Do you know which one? CIA Director Ratcliffe's trip to Moscow was related to contacts between the intelligence services of the 2 countries, Peskov stated. Seriously? And we thought he just popped into Krashka Kartoshka to grab a bite. And where are the other valuable statements? CIA Director Ratcliffe flew to Russia on a plane and flew away on a plane. That's all the information for now. Peskov is a master of making statements about nothing. I mean, the master of nothing is Peskov. By the way, when Peskov stated that Putin did not personally meet with the CIA director, he could have been telling the truth too. Well, first of all, no one delivered an ultimatum to Putin. I mean, everything went through Naryshkin. And secondly, even if he was running around the corridors somewhere, this Putin, which of those replicants could have met him? You never know, the CIA director might have had some kind of poisoned handshake. Putin is a hardcore paranoid after all. Maybe they sent that big-headed, chubby-cheeked replicant, the most energetic one of them, who is always jumping around on stage. Volodin threatened Japan with nuclear weapons over their claims to the Kuril Islands. I don't know if anyone is still afraid of Russian nuclear weapons, or these threats, in my opinion. Excuse my French, but nowadays they start threatening nuclear weapons even over a kick in the pants given to some Russian drunk at a Turkish resort. These threats were devalued back in the day by Medvedev, who, every time after a shot of vodka, would start spraying his ethyl saliva and screaming that he has nukes and Russia will show everyone yet. But, the quote from Volodin itself is important here. Let me read it to you. As for the leadership of Japan, let them recall their history once again. Recall the time when militaristic Japan destroyed millions of civilians. Now they are trying to return to the same rhetoric. Don't. It is impossible to defeat a nuclear power, which Russia is, stated Volodin. And who exactly decided that a nuclear power cannot be defeated? Well, who? I mean, when things get really bad, what they are hinting at is that when things get really bad, when this power is about to be finished off, the leader of the nuclear power will definitely press the nuclear button, knowing that after that they won't have much time left to live. I have serious doubts about that. And who defeated the Soviet Union when it collapsed, despite being a nuclear power? No one defeated it, it collapsed on its own. Therefore, with a competent approach, financial strangulation, and the bleeding out of the regime of degenerates and maniacs in the Russian Federation, everything is absolutely realistic. If there were the will and the determination of our partners, they would collapse and give up their nuclear weapons themselves. And it will be Volodin himself who hands them over. Take it with a loaf of bread in hand, please, take it. Putin started all of this. It wasn't us, we were forced to. And in general, I, Volodin, am the greatest admirer of non-traditional values. Please take me with you to Europe. That is exactly how he will hand over the nuclear weapons. Exactly like that. And as for you, friends, take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to the channel, don't forget. And let's help our soldiers from the 117th Brigade. We have just a little bit left to go to close the fundraiser for them. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.